Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. I am an acupuncturist, a dating coach, and a dude just out here trying to have a good time. So it was funny because I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we realized that really what I should be saying is that I'm a dating coach who never talks about dating. Because if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I don't talk about dating very much, and yet if you're paying attention, the things that I do talk about often, mindfulness, paying attention, using your intuition, and just generally trying to be as present as possible, these are the keys to dating really, really well. And it's not really about dating. It's about being able to be in relationship, having good relations in all areas of our life. So when we finally realized that, I'm the dating coach that doesn't really talk about dating, what have I gone and done is I've just created a podcast in today's episode that talks a lot about dating. And so here it is for you. Today we're diving into talking more directly to the intuitives and the empaths out there, and but we're also talking about limiting beliefs and those stories that we tell ourselves that might be getting in our own way. So I hope that you enjoy the episode. Thanks as always for being here. You can check me out at Instagram at James E. Rohr. That's R-O-H-R. Invitinginlove.com is the website. And you can email us at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. And without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Hey, what's happening? Happy Monday. Excited to be here with you. It was been a crazy, hectic few weeks. Thank you for all of the condolences about Cola. It was really just, that was a tough time. But it was great to hear your stories and, hearing from all you dog lovers out there that reached out and offered condolences and shared some of your stories. Is really appreciated hearing it. So in today's episode, I want to... we're going to talk about spiritual bypassing and in particular as it relates to empath. So if you've been paying attention to the podcast, you know that we moved from New York, which was like a crazy experience. We weren't organized enough to get together like a stoop sale or, the New York version of a garage sale. So we ended up just putting stuff out on the sidewalk, and it was really fascinating for like a week to watch people come and check out our stuff and, see what they would carry away, what was left behind. A lot of acupuncture books and, in the Polish community where I was in New York, apparently tantric sex books weren't a hot item, nor were relationship and dating books that I didn't need anymore for reference material. And so those stayed behind. It was also a tough day for Ray Dalio's Principles book. But, it was a reminder of this kind of huge ecosystem that we're in. And it was, almost like ants coming away and eating a carcass. It was, it was like watching our stuff just be picked up and redistributed. And I don't know, it's just a very fascinating experience leaving New York behind. And we took some stuff to donation places, and that's just such a different experience where you're going, you're driving, or you're walking, you're carrying all your shit, and you drop it off, and then it's done. Here, where it's, piece by piece, we're just sort of putting it out on the sidewalk, and people walking around will pick it up, and who knows what they're doing with it. But some of the old folks there were really intense about it. They were going actually through the garbage bag. So most of the time we just sort of displayed it out there. But other people were going through the garbage and searching through stuff. And I guess they this is what they do, for a hobby or maybe even for a living. They pick that stuff up and resell it. It was fascinating. And so anyway, so we were on the road, and I've been doing, I'll do these breakthrough calls for my for people that have seen the dating and relationship stuff, people that have been frustrated with their love lives and how they're showing up. And I have a masterclass at invitinginlove.com. And, some people, when they watch that, there's an invitation, if you've watched it, to book a free call. And so I had one of these calls that was scheduled. The calendar screwed up, and it was scheduled when we were on the move. We were driving down, and normally I make sure I'm in a really quiet, focused place to do it, but I didn't want to miss the call, and so I took it. And what was interesting was that, before all of these calls, I like to kind of meditate or visualize, just get an energetic reading of the person that I'm about to speak with, so I have an idea of what what it is that I'm stepping into. And with this particular call, what happened was when I was checking in with her energy from a distance, I had this really interesting impression of, it was like her heart had just a split down the middle. And then immediately around her energy field, especially like from the back of her head, I saw like the rainbows. It was just really beautiful, vibrant, colors that were trying to emerge. But then around that, like the next layer out from her physical body, it just seemed like this black cloud. And it was a really powerful impression. And what struck me about it was, my initial feeling was like, oh, this woman is an empath. She's feeling things very, very deeply. And, the crack in the heart could have been, it could have been anything, right? Going into the call, it could have been a heartache or a heartbreak or frustration. She's calling because she's not happy with her love life. So that's not exactly fucking profound that, I saw this crack in her heart. But the rainbow energy that was exuding from her, and then that kind of dark energy around it being stifled, was such a beautiful image that captured a lot of what I've seen when I'm talking with empaths. And so I get on the phone and we're I'm asking the questions, and she's opening up and talking about what her frustrations are. And it becomes very clear that she is empathic. She's very, very sensitive. So she's one of these people that can like walk into a room and pick up the energy of the room and feel what other people are feeling. And that experience gets really internalized. Right. So it's not just like a cognitive awareness of like, oh, this person's sad, but she's like feeling their sadness, which, if you're a professional, if you're in the healing arts, this is really valuable. But if you're just like a person who's trying to live her life, it can become overwhelming. And especially in the dating world, it can become very overwhelming. And so as we got going in the conversation, she was saying things that were clear, like they were really consistent with other empaths and intuitives that I have spoken with. And what happens, especially in the dating world, the conversation often goes like this, where they say something like, I'm empathic or I'm intuitive, and so I feel things about my date that they may not even know about themselves yet. Or I'm feeling their hidden desires or their shadows, the things that are blocking them, even before they even know it. They may not even be aware of these things. And so when I felt that he had mommy issues, I was immediately turned off, because I don't want to be this guy's mom. I'm not interested in dealing with that shit. It's some variation of those themes, right? And listen, I'm also very sensitive. Like, I get it. I understand what that's like to, feel something from somebody that they may not even be aware of themselves. And in dating, this can become frustrating, because part of what happens is when you feel like you've gotten an impression like that, what it can do is it can erode what I believe is one of the most important characteristics to have when it comes to dating, which is curiosity. And so for the empath or the intuitive out there, if you're feeling things, if you're getting these impressions, or your guides are speaking to you, you're getting these intuitive hits. And if that goes into the bucket of knowledge, of being like, okay, I know everything about this person already, or I know the main things about this person. And if that happens at the expense of being curious about who they are, about what they know, or what they think they know about themselves and what they like to talk about, if you lose that sense of curiosity, it's over. In my opinion, it's over. And so part of the balancing act is to be able to receive the impression and to still engage with 100% curiosity. Because, look, it's possible that the impression that you have is inaccurate. It's possible. or that what you had maybe it's a past life of theirs that you're picking up. Maybe it's not even something that's super active in the moment. And what my point is that especially when it comes to dating, but I think it's even with all of the relationships. And this is for me certainly something that I've gotten better at over the last, 25 years of, having some of these impressions be really present for me, which is to say, okay, that impression, that intuitive hit, it's just another piece of information. Just like if somebody said, it's sunny outside, or I'm hungry, or the Cubs won, or whatever, right? That's just another piece of information. But it's up to me to still engage with the present moment the way that I feel proud of, which for me is to be like as present and as open-minded as possible. And if the way that you want to engage in the present moment is from this place of all knowing everything already, well, then I would say that you're missing out on a whole world of opportunities. And with intuitives and empaths, there's this phrase that's called spiritual bypassing, and it can happen with anybody. Basically, spiritual bypassing is it's a defense mechanism. And it's basically a way to avoid doing the hard work. And with the spiritual part of it, it's like, so instead of being in the shadow work or, going deep inside and looking at what's there, we could be like, well, I meditated today, so everything is fine. Or I burned incense, so everything's fine. Or, it's the full moon, so it's not really me, it's just that the full moon is happening. These things where you're not necessarily taking full accountability for it. So one of the things that I encourage my intuitive and empathic clients to take a look at, especially when it comes to dating, is those impressions that are coming up, the experience that you have with it. If you are someone who's empathic and you're saying, dating is hard for you because you're an empath. Possibly. All right, possibly. But what if what you're feeling consistently, especially if this is a pattern for you, what if what you're feeling all the time, what your intuition is telling you is consistent with the same thing that you're afraid of? Right? So if you're afraid of being abandoned, then if your intuition gives you reasons to leave first, that's kind of convenient. Right? Or if you're afraid of being hurt, then if you feel like he doesn't listen, or he has his own issues that are going to justify reasons for you not to open up. And this is a very, very fine line for people who are very sensitive, because I'm sure you've had a bunch of data that says that what you feel is correct. Right? But what I'm suggesting is that there's an opportunity here to re-examine some of these beliefs, to at least be open to the possibility that your radar might be getting a little wonky when it comes to romance. And it's so easy for that to happen because, if you did open up to somebody who wasn't a good fit, maybe you lost some of that self-trust, or you started being extra guarded, right? And that can happen. But you might want to ask yourself, my suggestion is to ask yourself, is this really an intuitive red flag warning? Or is it just kind of run-of-the-mill standard fear? The fear of intimacy, the fear of opening up, the fear of being hurt. That happens to everybody. And that maybe it's not necessarily because you're an empath that dating is hard. Maybe it's just that you're just afraid of being hurt. Like, welcome to the club. And sometimes what will happen too is that we might really try to jack up the volume on our intuition when it comes to situations where we're uncertain or we're afraid of the outcome, because it can give us the illusion of being safer, right? We might really start looking for some things to hold on to or to guide us. But again, that might be a little weird, especially when the energy is really heightened with something that you might really want. And if you lose that sense of being present and curious, I think, there's just a whole array of life that's wasted there. Opportunities that are missed. So, part of the key is that with the intuition and with the empathy, Pay attention to it. Don't ever overlook it. Don't ever try to pretend that it wasn't there, but treat it just as another piece of information. It doesn't have to be the end all be all, right? Everything does change. The mood cycles change, right? The rhythms can change. The intuition that you felt may have been true in that moment, but in the next moment, maybe the whole set of circumstances has changed. So, but if you're struggling and suffering with your approach to dating and to love, going back to your strength of being an empath and intuitive can be a kind of an easy justification as to why it's not working for you, because you're not going to necessarily give that up, right? This is your strength. This is part of your superpowers. But if your superpower is the reason why you can't find a partner, like that seems kind of fucked up. It's heartbreaking. It's sad. The other part of this that I do a lot of coaching around, and it was absolutely critical with me in order to heal myself and to like just get on with my life when I was sick, was that experience of really feeling the person like fully, So if you're internalizing every little thing, one of the questions that I've had to ask myself and that I ask my clients is, what's the payoff of that? What do you get from that? And people might say, oh, I hate it. I don't like it. It's overwhelming. I can't go out and I get headaches and, all blah, 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 all these things that are difficult. But I still believe that there's a payoff from that. Somehow that works for you. Maybe life being overwhelmed, maybe that's easier. Maybe that's just familiar to you. And that's more comfortable than being more free or vulnerable or open. So somehow it works for us. In the healing capacity, it can be very effective. It can make you a great diagnostician. It gives me a sense of how to coach my clients better. But when you carry that with you, that's a tough one. That's for me, I don't know if maybe I've told this story here on the podcast, but my real first encounter with this in a way that was like unmistakable. When I was in acupuncture school, I got to be like the main treatment person before, a little bit early in the sequence by doing an off-site clinic. So we were working at this free clinic, this senior clinic downtown in San Diego. And it was my first client. I really wanted to help this guy feel better. And I wanted to prove to myself that the acupuncture worked and, see if it worked, and that I was, trying to gain evidence that I knew what I was doing, an effective healer and all this stuff. And so this guy comes in with headaches. Now, I've never used to get headaches ever. And I give him a treatment. It goes well. And I go home that night and I was watching 24. It was when that show 24 was still on the air. And in the middle of the episode, all of a sudden I get this pounding headache in the same side of my head where he had his. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. I had an idea that I was like, oh, I just picked up this guy's stuff. So I did some deep breathing, imagined myself letting it go, and then the headache went away. And I saw him the next week and I was following up. I said, hey, how's your headache? And he goes, oh yeah, it went away after the treatment. I was like, yeah, no kidding. And so I said, well, what are you working on today? And the guy goes, well, it's a little embarrassing, but my left testicle is killing me. And so there's points for that. It's like there's points in the lower leg and the hand and the ear for that. And so I give him a treatment, and I go back home, afterwards, and I'm watching 24 that night, sitting in the chair. And all of a sudden, it's like someone comes out of thin air and just kicks me super hard in the left testicle. And you get that like hollow, empty pain into the belly. It was horrible. It's a terrible feeling. And it was in that moment that I decided then and there, like, never again will I take on a patient's pain or ailment or any of that stuff. And what happened when I said that was it felt like there was this defensive energy that formed around me, like this shield, where loving things could come in, but other stuff would just be repelled away. And what also happened was that I stopped living in a defensive posture. I stopped asking myself, like, do I have all of my defenses up? What if I take on this person's energy? What if I absorb it? I stopped asking myself that question. And instead I started affirming, like, no, I'm free. I'm safe here. My guides are working with me. The energy goes out. Only good things come back in. And I stopped being obsessed with fear, because part of the training that I had earlier on, even before acupuncture school, when I was working with some of the Native American stuff, was this particular teacher would talk a lot about sometimes how there's dark energy and evil energy that can, latch onto you, and energy vampires and like all of this shit. And so I would overthink it. It was like that was a perfect recipe for my tendency to overthink. And, part of what I joke about now is that if people are, talking about the evils that are out there, especially the invisible evils, they'll be quick to sell you the protection. It's kind of a snarky, thing, but that was, kind of my experience. Even though this guy wasn't charging me for it, but there's inherent value in the person who's going to be the protector. And so I just was like, I got to let that story go. I have to let it go. I'm open to receiving information. I'm open to getting the insights. I'm especially open to seeing good things as well. But I don't need to absorb the information. I don't need to live that pain or their suffering. I'm going to be more effective as a healer and just as a human being, trying to bring a good mood to the situation if I'm not totally absorbed in experiencing the same exact pain that they're experiencing. And so there might be an opportunity for, the intuitives and the empaths out there, especially in the dating world, to set some better boundaries with yourself. And part of it is to say, okay, you don't necessarily need to internalize every little thing that they're feeling. And if you do get an impression, treat it just as that. It's an impression. It's a momentary piece of data that you're not going to dismiss, you're going to pay attention to, you'll honor it. Say, okay, I see you, thank you. And now I'm still going to bring 100% of curiosity to this moment. It might even help you ask like better questions. Just don't, try not to become the grand inquisitor on your date, but allow things to unfold while still being open. And there is definitely, I've talked a lot about the importance of creating a good environment. And especially when it comes to love and romance, creating an environment that allows you to thrive is critical. So if you are feeling and internalizing everything, perhaps there's another way to do it. And so asking yourself questions, if you're finding yourself saying statements over and over again, right? Like, I can't date well because I'm an intuitive, or dating is hard for me because I'm an empath. With any statement like that, you might ask yourself, does this belief help me get to where I want to be? And so if your superpower of being empathic or intuitive is the reason, if you keep saying that it's the reason that you're still single, it's time to write a different story. It's time to reframe that. I was even talking with a buddy of mine who's an artist. He's a painter and a musician. And he was saying, I paint when I'm happy and I write music when I'm sad. Right, which is great. It's great to have that awareness. And at the same time, if affirming that over and over and over and over again, then he's guaranteed to get that same result. If he wanted to say, there's a possibility that he might be able to paint really well when he's sad. But if he keeps affirming that he only paints when he's happy, then he's going to have to be happy in order to paint. Or if he wants to write music, he's going to have to do shit in his life in order for him to be sad, in order to get that creative juice to create that art. And, that might be his truth. And what I know for sure is that, if we believe these things to be our truth, then that's what we're going to see. We're going to keep accumulating data to support and to reinforce that. And that if you are struggling, if you're challenged by where you're at in life, take a look at those statements that you keep saying over and over again. And you can just ask yourself, is this true? Is it true? And then the next question that I like to ask is, and is this a belief that is going to get me to where I want to be? And if not, then start experimenting with different statements. Start experimenting with a different way to approach it. Yeah. My intuition is my superpower. I'm extra lovable because I'm intuitive. Dating and relationships are easy for me because I'm empathic. Even if that seems really weird, but that's a belief that would be more consistent with where you want to be. So try it out. I can feel people without internalizing all of their stuff. I can bring a good mood no matter what's happening. My past doesn't have to have a hold on me. My past has set me up to be awesome in this moment. Right? Whatever it is. Whatever it is, you get to start creating new statements that are consistent with where you want to be instead of always just affirming where you've been. Because if you're trying to get somewhere else, then affirming the same things that led you to be where you are is a surefire way to stay exactly where you are. And so for you intuitives and empaths out there, you're doing God's work. I feel you. And I want you guys to have love. I want you to be able to attract and to be in this amazing relationship with somebody, because I can personally tell you how much more grounding and valuable it is to have a loving partner to support me, to give me the courage to do the things that I want to do, and who's totally down with, the stuff that I feel, and how helpful that has been. Just exploring and experiencing my life and doing that. And so I know that, you being empathic, intuitive is not the reason that all of these things, it doesn't have to be the reason that you stay single. It might be the reason why things have been difficult for you to this point, but it doesn't have to be that way moving forward. And it starts when you start changing your story. So if you're struggling with these things and you want some help and support, you can check my stuff out, invitinginlove.com. I'm on Instagram at James E. Rohr. Watch that masterclass. And then if you need some help, just reach out. I'm happy to do it. You can email the podcast also at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for the love again with the passing of my dog last week. And I'm just so glad that you guys are here. I love all of you, and I'll catch you next time.